Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. We're going to be playing a bit of KaiserReich today. And today we are going to be playing as the... One second. Let me see here. The United States of America, but we won't be sticking with them for long. I know they updated the Civil War recently. Pretty light update, but I think they also updated the American Union state as well. Under Huey Long, so we're going to be taking Huey Long's Wild Ride today. Long. About what I'm doing, really. You know, I had to reset a couple of times just because the Civil War, you start off with so many few mills, you know, and if you start off in a bad position, you can kind of just get pushed back immediately, you know, which isn't usually that good. You know, a lot of this stuff, just normal setup stuff, you want to make the longest as strong as possible. You want to make sure that you try and push back the socialists as much as possible. I think if you get the Federalists weak enough, you get the whole of the Midwest, and if you don't, then they get the Midwest, the Federalists, basically. So basically, the Federalists can either be stuck in Maryland and Virginia, or they can get kind of middle states in the Midwest. So you kind of just go through a lot of these basic motions. You want to make sure that Huey Long gets elected. You know, that's very important, obviously. Gives you a bit more power to see you get the Midwest there. And I think the longest in this mod, they're meant to be sort of like the populist party of like the late 1800s, really. You know, they're kind of like the odd one out of this conflict, you know. They didn't really exist in our time as much. You know, you know, the syndicalists, it makes sense. The constitutional people, they make sense, and so does the federal government. But this is more of a special sort of, you know, it looks like it's like a mix between Midwestern populists and like a lot of Southern Democrats. You know what I mean? And you know, people mainly think of Southern Democrats, they think of them as pro-segregation, but they're also very much pro more government spending, you know, larger welfare programs, which is why they're part of FDR's coalition. Now I kind of got sidetracked, not talking about Arts Farm 4 anymore. You know, my main focus was just trying to get encirclements in the early game. I used Patton and the infantry divisions I got to encircle around a few places. That made this, you know, a whole lot easier in the long run, you know, just because it gave me more time to build up. And I think when you are playing as, like, the faction you strengthen the most, as I did with the American Union state, you do get stronger than the other factions in the long run. You know, for this first little bit here, like the volunteers from the foreign powers are the biggest threat. I didn't really get any, you know, I didn't get any from Germany, I don't think, or even Austria or Russia or anything like that. Just all from, nobody really didn't get any Lend-Lease either. I think the Entente supported the federal government. So I really just had to hold out against those volunteers. They sent light tanks and stuff. You know, I try to make an early push towards Washington. I started trying to build up my infantry, but that just doesn't really always work out, you know. Sometimes you just gotta, that was me changing my settings there real quick. Sometimes you just gotta pull back, you gotta go back to other fronts, you know what I mean, make sure it doesn't collapse. You know, you get a big encirclement there of the Federalists. You know, they're fighting up in New England the whole time. I think if they don't get the Midwest, then they get New England and New York, basically. They hold out pretty well. They get rid of a lot of my convoys, too, which gets pretty annoying later on. Let's see here. You know, there's music playing over this, so I hope you enjoy that. I hope that stays at a good level. You know, a lot of this is just trying to make small encirclements, you know, trying to push through. You know, the American Union states are definitely the underdog in the conflict. Probably the syndicalists are probably the strongest faction, I think. You know, and this focus tree is a lot smaller than I thought it'd be. You know, it's pretty small. KaiserReich has got me pretty spoiled when it comes to focus trees and stuff. They're usually a lot larger, a lot different paths, but there's something about KaiserReich, it runs a lot faster, you know, it's a lot more stable, it's a lot more balanced as well, it's a bit more challenging. A lot of the time, the KaiserReich can make it a bit too overpowered, but I think I might prefer it over this mod. I came back here just because I knew they had updated it. I did go for superior firepower as my doctrine this time. I put a lot of artillery in most of my divisions, specifically my main infantry division, which is what I used to push here. You know, a lot of this is just trying to clean up. The Canadians became a big threat because they did support the Federalists, and they started pushing on through the Syndicalists. And you know, I just had a lot of just infantry over there. You know, you see me try and push all the way up, try and get rid of the Federalists as soon as I can, but they're pushing me down. I think they get almost all the way to Tennessee or something, past Kentucky. Which, you know, pretty bad. Also, the Constitutional Coalition, whatever they're called, the Democrats and Republicans, they're pushing me back over there. Which becomes pretty worrying. See me, I get a couple big encirclements here. I think that, you know, these guys, it's 1940, they should be going to war with the Unions, with the Union of Britain by now, but they haven't. Or maybe they are. I think they are at war with the Union of Britain now, but they're just going all in on the American conflict, which is, you know, just a little crazy. I made a big encirclement. The Syndicalists, pretty interesting. They were stuck up in New York, basically, and then they are able to push out of there. So they move all the way from the Midwest all the way over to New York. That's pretty crazy. I would say overall, this whole thing, you know, it was a bit of a challenge. It was definitely really fun, but it was pretty fun. Yeah. It was challenging. You just have to keep on moving back and forth. I kind of wish I finished the war sooner. You know, because the sooner you finish it, the sooner you can get through the Reconstruction, the sooner you can start just like really growing super quickly. Maybe trying to push up. I think once I get Toronto, Montreal, and Ottawa, I think you win against them. They offer peace, but still, I mean, that's pretty crazy. I took their castle in Montreal, and I still had to push down to Toronto. You know. And you know, by this point, they weren't really much of a threat anymore. They were able to push me out in the Midwest just because I only had militia out there. You can see me start to move in now on the, like the Democrats and the Republicans, you know, the Democratic coalition. This probably was the easiest part of the war, really. You know, just trying to make a big encirclement, just trying to get the victory points as quickly as possible, because it's already 41, 43, and, you know, I don't want to run up against like a super big mega faction later on, you know? Which, you know, you'll see here. You know, and I'm sure you saw it in the thumbnail or the title, which is that the new Entente forms, which I don't know if that came in with the new Russia update. I think that's a pretty cool little faction. It is just a rebrand of like the Moscow Accord, which is pretty cool, but well, I mean, not pretty cool. It's all right, but I mean, I think it's cool they can do that. You know, and this kind of ends up being like what World War I should have been in our timeline. You know, the Russians, the Americans, the French, the British, all working together. You know, I do keep the color as the dark blue just because I feel like, you know, why not? I feel like it could be kind of pointless. And of course, Huey Long does stay as president. He's probably there until he dies, really. We're organizing all my divisions. I'm making an air force. You know, I think this run I go with Mountaineers instead of tanks, just because it's pretty late in the run. I haven't really done any research for tanks or anything like that. I'm just mostly reintegrating most of America and taking a lot of decisions. I think I try and start researching the nuclear bomb. I think at the beginning of the game I made sure to put a nuclear research facility in Georgia, but that turns out to not really have mattered because I needed to do the nuclear research icon first. But I will get to work on that later on. And you'll see someone special I get to use it against, because I don't get to use it against the commies. So you see me, I keep on going through here. You know, these decisions, they're just kind of there to build factories. You don't need to do decisions to reintegrate or core a lot of the territories that you have. They just go immediately on reintegration. I think something interesting about Huey Long's ideology is that you think it would be more racist, just because it's national populist. You know, I don't support that sort of thing, but you think it would be from the South, you know, but in our timeline, he seems to have been mostly avoidant on race. It was a really big issue at the time. They were focusing more on the Great Depression and stuff. And in this timeline, the KaiserReich timeline, he seems to be more colorblind. Which I don't know. We don't. I mean, there's a focus called Defang the Klan, which you could say that's long being anti-racist, but I think it's really interesting to think about what his ideology would be if he had lived or if he had been elected president. It definitely was some sort of right-wing populism. He was definitely not a socialist, even though the Share the Wealth program may seem like that. And I do get into the national focus here for the Share the Wealth program, and I do make a big mistake coming up here. So I hope you guys don't notice that. But the Share the Wealth program, basically what it does, give you great buffs, weekly stability, max factories, monthly population, weekly war support, and it doesn't really, but it keeps on increasing consumer goods. I don't get rid of it. There's a decision to get rid of it if it gets too high, which takes away a lot of your stability. And I might have joined the war here too early. You see me with negative 20% stability, 0% war support. And I do reload there just because the Mexicans are breaking on through. And they have some pretty good tanks. I don't really have anything in my arsenal yet that can just go right up against tanks, really. My Air Force is still too small. All my Mountaineers are with Patton over in Canada. So I'm kind of struggling to defend here. I put down the research network over there. Makes it a lot easier. And then goes Paris against Moscow. I think that's when the new Entente forms to go against the Syndicalists. So, the war, I probably wasn't going to lose this. It was probably only a matter of time before I did win against them. But you see me building up over here, trying to push on through. And I think that works out pretty well, most of, I am able to encircle their tanks, I believe, while they're pushing up on through there. But I think in just a moment you'll see that I encircle them. I'm already thinking, I got to build up a submarine navy to try and naval invade over in Europe because I don't want to have to defend my convoys going all the way over to Russia and stuff. It's just not feasible unless I go the long way around. And then again, that's really just not that fun. So I took out their tanks. I start moving south here. The Mexicans, they had me on the back foot for a little bit, but America's scale is just so big in the late game. You see I have 492 factories. I think I get up to somewhere close to 700 by the end of this. It's already 1944 too, which is pretty interesting. Game still moves. I mean, this felt like a slow game, but that's probably because I was doing a lot of micro in the Civil War and stuff. But once I get in the later game, it still runs pretty smooth. That's something I can say about KaiserReich, that it's that is better than KaiserReich in that department. Is that the game still runs pretty buttery smooth, at least for me. I'm able to capitulate Mexico. I start getting to work on the naval invasion. You see me start working on nuclear reactors there. They are pushing back Russia a bit over there, which is pretty spooky, I do not want to have to fight the whole of Europe. I'm down to 0 manpower. That's a little frightening. I think at some point I delete divisions just to get more manpower just because I'm not mobilizing fast enough, But my stability, my war support, it's all pretty high by now. I think it's pretty cool I get Patton as a general. I'm a big fan of the movie. I'm a big fan of him. I've read his book. I'm forgetting the name of it right now. It's not Lessons of War, but it's just kind of about his experiences during the war, and it's not like a novel or anything like that. It's not like a normal biography where it's there's some sort of entertainment to it. It just goes through what he does day by day, but that's just very fascinating. So you see me get the naval invasion here. I start building forts all over the place because I'm going to send over, my main army now. There's a little threat in there just because they send in the naval bombers, as you can see, and that's a little spooky, because they naval invade behind me. Pretty devastating to lose all of my special elite divisions, right there, right as I get into Europe. That would not be fun. But hey, what can you say? I'm doing pretty well. Only the Spanish are here trying to defend against me, and because they had a civil war earlier, the Iberian Union, because they had a civil war, it's pretty easy to push them back. The Syndicalists did win both civil wars this game in Italy and Spain, but they're kind of pushovers unless they have a good tank corps, But I think they're all distracted on the front with the Eastern Front with the Russians, and once they get beat there, It's all over, you know. But you see me trying to push in here, pretty easy, just encircling most of their divisions, you know. I give it all to the Kingdom of France. I thought they were in the faction of the New Entente. That's why I did it. Also, the Italian Social Republic, pretty neat final tag there for the totalist version of Italy. I like that there's this different version of socialism. You know, basically fascism. I think that's immensely interesting. And it's just, I don't know, it just adds more flavor to the mod, you know what I mean? It's a good end goal, I think. So maybe I'll do an Italy playthrough. I don't know. But you see me, I move my subs down south just so they can, you know, be better at raiding, you know, get through that choke point. That's where you should always put your subs, is in that one area right between Africa and South America. Also, you can see me planning my naval invasion of Hawaii, and even though, you know, I want to take the main island, Japan gets almost everything else. I'll come back to that later. You know, and I'm still trying to get my nuclear bombs. I've researched them, or I'm still researching them, but I built a lot of reactors already. I'm doing a lot of the paratrooper tech just because it gives you more special forces attack, you know. I start pardoning some of the old generals, just so I can get on. I think I partnered with the Federalist generals, but none of the other ones. Do the exile for maximum war support. You can see me trying to get the Navy over here, trying to get naval supremacy. I eventually do. Even though they probably had a better Navy than me. I don't even notice that the naval invasion pops off, but then, you know, they get all those divisions and stuff. And I was thinking about going to the war with the New Entente for a little bit, just to find a place to use those nuclear weapons. But I think of one pretty soon. And I end up joining them, just because, you know, it's a pretty cool little alternate history thing. New Entente, you know. The Allies were basically like the New Entente, very similar to them, you know. And I think it's a cool word. So I go to war with Japan, obviously. You know, I think you all know where this is headed. I don't have any sort of strategic bombers, so I research the interwar ones pretty quickly. I start trying to get naval superiority. I send my subs down south, and I think I put my main navy in the Sea of Japan. So I think their main navy is distracted for a little bit. You know, I try and get air superiority, you know, and what I'm trying to do now, I think you've already guessed it, I'm trying to nuke them, basically, you know, nothing personal, you know, nothing to do with any historical reason, you know, but I gotta use them, I built them, so I might as well use them, you know, I'm not making any sort of political statement here, I'm just saying in the game, I built them, I might as well use them. You know, I just don't think it's fair not to. To all the hard men and women, there's a black woman researching it, you know. A black woman researching it, so just of the verse of you, Huey Long. You know, I didn't know he was like that, but can't judge him, you know. I can't judge him, you know. But anyways, keep on trying to push here. Make the naval invasion. I start prepping the operations for the nuclear bombs, basically. Yep, there it goes. One on Yokohama or Tokyo, I can't really remember. And then I think from here I just start pushing them out. You know, it's not super difficult. You know, the Japanese, once you get on the mainland, they're kind of a pushover. Sometimes it's hard to push them. Oh, and I accidentally nuked my own troops there. But it's fine. I got 7 million manpower, 800 factories. It's over. It's over. And so in just a second here, we're gonna take a look at the map, you know, for the end of the game, you know, see what it looks like. We're probably reaching the crescendo of the music here. The music's been playing in the background the whole time, so I'll let that play out, you know. You can see the Indians there joining the New Entente. I think I'd go to war with them and the Thai, because they steal a couple more of my islands off of Japan, but, you know, that's fine. That's fine, you know. And I think maybe I'll take over the faction, you know, make it nice and blue for the end. I realize they need to have 18 million manpower and God knows how many factories, so I just decided to leave it alone. And we're still at war with the Filipinos and the Indonesians at the end, but I mean, that's really an afterthought. You can see him already trying to do naval invasions down there. I think those are the Portuguese, actually, that are doing those naval invasions. You know, I'm doing the fate of the country and stuff right here. Just like all of them. So yeah. Pretty cool end of the game. You know, new Entente. I think that, I don't know if that's an Easter egg or not, but it's pretty cool. You can see we kind of dominate the world. I think the Brazilians, they have control of most of South America, but we all know who's the top dog here. You know, you may think the Russians are the top dog, but you know, they don't have nukes. They don't have 5 nukes with many more on the way. You know, so we all know who's the top dog here. I hope you enjoyed the video. You know, it was pretty interesting. Quite the wild ride, you know, but I think it was a good one. So let me know if you want to do another one of these. If you want me to go with war with Russia or the new Entente, keep this video. Actually, I don't want to do that. You know, if you want to see me play more KaiserReich instead of Kaiser Redux, then like, subscribe if this video gets 5 likes, and I'll do that. How about that? So goodbye. Have a great day. Thank you.